Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my home. I am Victoria Wilder, author of Lullaby of the Lilitu, this lovely novel you see in front of you. I forgot to light my candle. So, hopefully, you can hear me because I am using a different microphone that I hope works. I think it's a little clearer than what we've been using. I'm going to go ahead and light this candle so you guys have something to look at when we turn out the lights. Okay, so as you may know, if you watched the first video, I will be reading my novel, Lullaby of the Lilitu, and I am doing this because it just seemed like the thing to do with all of the, the isolation that we're doing. And I don't know, I feel like that word isolation is strange, but we're not here to talk about that. But the distancing that we're doing, I feel like sharing stories is a really good way to keep calm and keep, mentally sane. Sharing stories, listening to stories, reading stories, podcasts, all these things are just good for you, I think. So I've decided to read. It is 5:30 a.m. where I am now, and I'm sure someone around is awake or it's daylight wherever you are. And I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you can hear me again. So let's read. I'm going to turn off this light and read with my book light here so you can get comfy, relax. Yesterday, we read from the opening chapter to chapter 4 of part 1, or through chapter 3 of part 1, and we'll be starting on chapter 4 of part 1 tonight. Four. My throat and chest tightened, blocking the scream, threatening to escape. I wanted to move, to be as far away from this ghastly scene as possible. The bedroom, my bedroom, was safe. That's where I should be, not in this courtyard watching a man die. My legs tingled, vibrating my bones, and the courtyard began to spin. The colors melted into one another, whites and greens and reds. I couldn't make out anything solid. My stomach lurched as I crashed into the bedside table in the room where I had awakened, heaving water as I landed. What the hell was that? I coughed, trying to regain my senses, still dizzy from the burst of movement. When I turned to face the door, Tabitha sat behind me on my bed, offering me a plush blue towel. I took it and wiped my mouth. My hands trembled. Sabrina! Sorry, you guys, my cat is crawling into things she shouldn't be crawling into. Sabrina! Please come here, kitten. She's got great timing, right? Okay. She's gonna make a little noise. Sorry, guys. Where was I? My hands trembled. You'll get used to it after a while. She held her hand out to help me up. Controlling your speed is just a matter of focus. No, outside, that monster. I swallowed hard, but it couldn't stop the sobbing. Tabitha rubbed my shoulders as I shattered while trying to describe what I'd witnessed. Once I stopped crying, she led me back down to the den. Victor and Yuri whispered to one another on the couch, but stopped as we entered and looked over at us. Victor spread his lengthy arms across the back of the sofa as Yuri jumped to his feet and rushed to my side. He pulled me to the massive red chair near the couch and sat on the arm, holding my trembling hands. For a brief second, I noticed how the vibrant colors next to one another seemed to compete for attention. The brightness of the room annoyed me. My little Rose, what's given you such a fright? I glared at Yuri. He acted as though he hadn't been standing there beside me. Victor laughed, a deep, rumbling sound reminiscent of a wild river, and Tabitha shot him a look. He rose, bowing low. I'll get him, amour. He sauntered out of the room, humming as he left. A sound forced its way out of my throat, a mix of a squeak and a sob. My breath caught in my chest and my entire body quaked with sudden panic. Tabitha sped to me. She gazed into my eyes, the deep brown of her own melting into a dancing swirl. Warmth and calm poured into me. I blinked and took a slow breath. What did you do? Tabitha smiled. It's just a little trick of the aura. You needn't worry. She ran a cool hand across my forehead. Outside, it is only Samson and one of his tasteless hunting games. What I saw wasn't a game. It was murder, I said, surprised I could articulate a full sentence. Didn't you read my book, Little Rose? Yuri disappeared out of the room, returning beside us with the red notebook in hand before I could say anything. Lilitu aren't bound by such human notions. He held the book in front of me. My cat's going crazy. Sabrina! She's losing her mind, guys. Oh my god. Sabrina! Hi? Is this the time? Is this the time to go crazy? Oh. I might just do half an hour tonight, guys. Didn't you read my book, Little Rose? Yuri disappeared out of the room, returning beside us with the red notebook in hand before I could say anything. Lilitu aren't bound by such human notions. He held the book in front of me. I thought you might have questions, so I took the liberty of making this manual for you. I'm only sorry I couldn't be the one to give it to you in the first place. I took a deep breath, resisting the urge to throw the book across the room. This wasn't the time for reading. The door slammed in the great hall, and a loud, boisterous laugh bounced off the walls. As it neared, a pungent, sweet aroma struck my nose. My stomach... Whoa. Sorry, guys, I kind of lost my place. My stomach twisted and gurgled as I swallowed, my mouth filling with heat and moisture. Samson bounded around the corner, a large grin spread across his handsome, fiercely masculine face. Bright red blood soaked into his blue button-down shirt and spotted his faded jeans. He crossed the room, his steps punctuated with the click of his heeled leather boots on the stone floor, and stood in front of me with his hands on his hips. He laughed, apparently delighted at the sight of me with my knees curled up to my chest and trembling. He loomed over me, the brim of his hat shadowing his eyes. Hey there, girl. Did I scare you? He leaned forward until his face hovered right in front of mine. The room spun and knots formed in my stomach as the smell of blood on his clothes and breath filled my head. You ain't gotta be scared of me, he whispered. I froze, staring at his grinning face, deep dimples spread across his cheeks. Where were the pointed teeth I had seen? His smile faded. He winked before standing and taking a few steps back, tipping his hat to me. I'm Samson. His eyes crinkled once again with a large smile. Samson is sort of like our stepbrother, Yuri explained, or a stray. The imposing man feigned offense, placing a hand across his broad chest. He never broke eye contact with me as Yuri continued speaking. I found him on a farm in the States. He was positively feral, feeding on servants and slaves, ransacking taverns. He attacked me when I met him. Yuri chuckled and smiled to himself. He seemed a little too amused at the memory. We still don't know who made him. Whoever it was, they must have had a cruel sense of humor to just leave him there. Yuri shrugged. He doesn't carry Kyan's blood, so he's not able to sign our branch of the tree. That's why you didn't see his name when you signed. Samson's smile sent ice into my bones. He looked down at his bloodied clothes and glanced back up at me. I guess I ought to shower. Welcome home, miss. He tipped his hat again, lifting it and revealing a clean-shaved head. Then he clicked out of the room. I looked between Tabitha and Yuri. They seemed calm and relaxed. Yuri even had a hint of a smile forming at the corner of his lips. Was this some sort of elaborate, terrifying prank? My mind flashed with memories of reality shows with a similar premise. Was this what it meant to be Lilitu? To be a killer? Both of my new siblings were far too accepting of a bloody cowboy roaming the house. Part 1, Chapter 5. Yuri spoke again, but my mind trailed away, still processing all I had seen over the last few hours. I closed my eyes, taking slow, deep breaths. His voice faded until everything fell silent. After a few seconds, the sounds of metal and glass filled the silence, and I stood in a kitchen. Images formed in the darkness of my eyelids. A large chef's knife clattered to the floor, covered in blood. Hands, my hands, stretched out before me as the floor came rushing towards me. I gasped, opening my eyes, my hands gripping the arms of the red chair. Yuri raised an eyebrow. Did you faint? Lilitu don't faint. Tabitha shook her head. She's been through a lot, brother. She stood and stretched, reaching long limbs up and over to the side. She looked like an onyx statue of a ballerina. In spite of my fear, I felt an acute awareness of the serene nature belonging to the woman in front of me. She carried tranquility with her, making it almost impossible for me to remain upset for long. She looked down and grabbed my hand, dragging me towards the foyer. Yuri slid into the chair behind us, flipping through the book I left in the seat as Tabitha pulled me out of the room. She seemed comfortable taking me wherever she pleased. I didn't protest. Being around her made this whole thing feel less terrible, and being alone with that Samson creature in the house was simply not an option. From there, we moved at a brisk pace through the house, across the bright foyer, and into a hall that extended behind the staircase. We entered a spacious room with smooth wood floors and mirrored walls. Loud music blasted from a stereo in the corner as Mia danced in the middle of the room. Thorny inked vines circled upwards on powerful legs, disappearing into tight, black shorts as she swayed, ignoring us. Graceful arms swung over her head, one covered in a full sleeve of tattoos. Thorns decorated her wrists. She twirled around us, the colors painting her body danced with her. My breath caught in my throat and my heart fluttered. The redness of earlier had faded, but in its place, swollen, angry welts covered her skin, her legs, her arms. The welts spread across her heaving chest. She'd been beaten. The song ended and she spun to a stop. She took deep breaths, keeping her eyes shut as she held her pose, her choppy red hair spread wild around her head. I couldn't help myself. I clapped in ecstasy. She whirled to face us with wide eyes. Shice, Tabitha, why'd you bring her here? Her strong accent filled the room with venom. Mia stomped to the stereo and turned it off, kneeling beside it to untie the black ribbons on her shoes. She muttered to herself. Sweat plastered her long bangs to her forehead as she looked up at me through stunning teal eyes. My mouth watered, and I was suddenly a different kind of nervous. Her angry eyes blazed as she stood and marched towards the door. I told you, I didn't want to see her. She stormed out, slamming the mirrored door behind her and rattling the walls. What was that about? I sank to the floor. My knees still trembled from the meeting with Samson, and my heart had begun a ferocious pounding the moment I'd made eye contact with that furious girl. She seemed to be the only person not over the moon about my arrival. I wasn't entirely sure she was wrong. I wasn't entirely sure of anything. It all seemed off somehow, but I possessed no memory for reference, and no one seemed willing to remind me. I wrapped my arms around my knees and rocked on the floor. Tabitha kneeled in front of me. I'm sorry. I thought it would help if you saw each other. She rubbed her arms, squeezing at her shoulders. And how exactly would that help her? Cayenne filled the doorway. His voice yanked me to my feet. Anna's small frame slipped around him, carrying a long, hooded blue velvet cloak. Tabitha took a step back and lowered her head, but after a moment she nodded and smiled at me. I'm going to check on Mia. She pulled me into a tight hug. Welcome home, darling. She glanced up at Cayenne before disappearing from the room. Cayenne's dark, wavy hair danced around his head. The room brightened as he grinned at me, and a softness surrounded my vision. Would I ever get used to this dizziness around him? Are you ready to go, my girl? He gestured to Anna without waiting for a response. Of course, but where are we going? The silent servant draped the heavy cloak around my shoulders, fastening 2 large golden buttons on the front. A 7-pointed star gleamed on their shiny faces. Our village, Livse. Cayenne took my hand and guided me towards the front door where a pair of calf-length leather boots waited. He was already walking outside as I fell into the second boot and hopped after him. I didn't intend to let him get much further than that. All I had seen since waking up were trees and this house. Our village. I ran to him as he rounded the eastern wing. Are there other Lilitu there? How many did you make, Papa? Yuri said. The words stuck on my lips as a line of open stables came into view. Large wooden structures painted in reds and golds housed dozens of powerful beasts. Caspians, Morgans, Clydesdales, horses of all sorts. A squeal slipped past my lips. No sight could compare to this. Cayenne chuckled beside me. Glad to see some things cannot change. Come. He led the way across an open field. I gazed at the expanse of land. It had to be at least 10 acres, all surrounded by a forest of silvery white trees. Further east, a large pool sat, filled with fresh snow. West, a huge greenhouse, statues and topiary-lined wood-chipped paths. Oh, that's good. It's perfect. I sighed and jogged forward, eager to reach the horses. A scent crashed into me and I jerked backwards. The sweet aroma which had coated Samson's shirt, only this time it smelled richer, more attractive, savory. A man waited beside a grand golden carriage. Its doors dripped with jewels and lace curtains. He held the door open, keeping it between us and an arm's length away. Ready at your call, master. My stomach gave an answering growl. The man stepped back as beads of sweat purled on his forehead. Rapid thudding boomed in my ears. Rapid thudding boomed in my ears, accompanied by the pulsing rush of thick fluid. He glanced at Cayenne, a silent plea. We mustn't eat the help, child. Cayenne ushered me into the carriage, pulling the door tight behind us. A small electric light flickered on as we settled into the satin lined sheets. The man outside yelled something abrupt and sharp, and the carriage lurched forward. We don't do that, do we? I narrowed my eyes at Cayenne. Eat people? Gods, is that why the sausage was so good? Cayenne's rumbling laughter filled the carriage. That was just pig. Something the body craves but doesn't need. Humans, on the other hand, are essential. Through them, we have immortality. I gripped the seat, my fingers sinking into the soft pillows. What do you mean? You've seen Samson hunt. The rest of us aren't always so vicious, but he didn't need to finish. Erie said that humans were cattle. How could I guess he meant literally? My stomach twisted at the idea that I could be a monster like that. A murderer? Lilitu aren't monsters, Rio. Cayenne's voice cut into my thoughts, edged with a hint of anger. We are gods humans call upon us. We are the gods humans call upon. We care for them, guide them, and in return, their blood sustains us. I bit my lip and stared at the beautiful being across from me. Considering his speed and strength, and everyone else's in our home, I could believe we were gods. That the hunger gnawing at me since I'd met the coachman was my divine right. If Cayenne said so, it was easy to accept. Part 1, Chapter 6. Imagined pictures filled my mind with liveried servants and villagers greeting us in celebration. They'd kneel and sing our praises as we stepped from the carriage. As gods, we would be met with cheers and adulations from our loyal subjects. The horses trotted for half an hour before the coach stopped and the driver opened our door. Cayenne held out a hand towards me and helped me down. The sky had turned a dark gray after sunset, but was light enough to allow the silhouettes of clouds above us to stand out. A large, gated entrance waited for us 15 meters away, far enough from view of the villagers behind it, flanked on either side by a guard. The carriage turned, and the horses trotted off onto a small side path where I assumed they'd be taken care of until we returned. We were walking the rest of the way. So much for my royal arrival. Cayenne gazed into my eyes. You'll need to hold my hand without fail, he said. You will feel hunger like you've never known once we're close. In time, this will ease. Until it does, I will keep you in check. My hand fit like a child's in his, hidden from view when he wrapped his fingers around mine. Just as he'd said, hunger gnawed at me the closer we got to the village entrance. The craving twisted my stomach, making me dizzy and nauseous. My mouth watered and my eyes burned. The gate ahead of us faded from view as my steps faltered and a low growl erupted from me in a voice I couldn't recognize. I doubled over. My vision blackened, followed by a soft, glowing light, and the sounds around me muted. I looked up to see a woman and man standing in a small living room, arguing with a tall, shadowy figure as I peered around a corner. I couldn't make out what they said, but a dark red cloud surrounded them. The man stood in front of the woman, shielding her as she yelled at the shadow and pointed towards the door. Strong hands pulled me from the ground. One caressed my face, and the other still held my hand. Come back to me, my darling girl. Come back to me. Kyan's eyes shone bright as he scanned my face. A warm sensation prickled at the back of my head as his gaze locked onto mine, and he pulled me into the pool, into the gold green pool, once again. When he released me, the hunger subsided. The faces and figures faded so quick, I wondered if I'd actually seen them. Kyan watched me with concern, bending his expression. Expression. Are you okay? He pulled me into his arms for a brief hug before pushing me back again and inspecting my face. Have you had other episodes like this? Once, I choked out. After I met Samson, I heard kitchen sounds and saw. I don't know what I saw. It isn't clear anymore. He let me go and stroked his chin, turning until I could no longer see his face behind the cascade of dark waves. Perhaps, he whispered, this is a psychic connection to one of the humans nearby. You said you heard a kitchen, right? I nodded. There you have it. You tapped into Anna's mind, her memories. You haven't mastered your abilities yet. He grinned and grabbed my hand. Tension melted from his shoulders as he led me forward. His explanation made sense. I must have tapped into one of the villagers just now, seen some sort of family squabble. Maybe everyone had the same problem when they awoke. Kyan guided me towards the gate, an ornate iron monstrosity. The two guards waited, unmoving, until we stood right in front. They pushed it open for us to enter and closed it behind us, neither looking straight at us. Villagers bustled around the town marketplace as we broke into the crowd. A bouquet of odors danced through the air in all emotion, intoxicating me. Each human had their own scent, but I couldn't pick one out from the crowd after a few minutes immersed in it. Despite the flowering aromas, Livesey Village didn't strike me as an exciting place. Browns and grays, mules, carts, and wooden buildings, but no real color to speak of. The villagers ambled through the marketplace in plain hooded cloaks, hiding their faces. Where was our grand welcome? Kyan had said we were their rulers. Why weren't they bowing or rushing to serve us? My scalp tingled as Kyan siphoned the questions from my mind. They do not serve us out of love, my pet, but fear, he answered. These families have lived in Livesey for almost 2 centuries, brought here to serve our family, and kept in stasis to preserve their purity. He guided me through the town square, pointing out a large chapel and school across the square, lined against the backdrop of the silver-white trees. They are harsh devouts. We are worshipped all over the world. Few humans know we truly exist. Those humans come from this place. Then why do they fear us, Papa? Gods have always been feared, sweet little girl. We walked through the village, hand in hand, towards a small path to our left. We passed a few shops and the small 2-room school. People scurried past us, never making eye contact. Parents shooed their curious children into their homes or nearby buildings. One large building emitted the fragrance of beets and cabbage soup, roasting ham and animal blood. Inside, glasses clamored and music played as the stomping of dancing feet broke through the hushed reverence. A woman's voice whispered nearby. Heathens, them. He walks this land and they drink and dance. He ought to rip their throats out. I looked at her and she hurried away, covering her eyes. I pulled Cayenne towards the noisy building. A small sign hanging over the door read, Dalton Tavern. Cayenne relented, following my lead as I dragged him to a window. The humans inside danced and clapped as a motherly woman played a cittern. 2 young boys danced around her, and the older one, beating a drum, and the other puffing into a small fipple flute with all the enthusiasm of a child. Maids twirled in and out of the room with heavy trays of food, ale, and wine. This was the revelry I'd hoped for. These people knew how to greet a deity. They are not celebrating in our honor. They believe we are to be hated, not feared or worshipped. Cayenne's jaw sharpened and twitched as he watched the merriment within the tavern through two burning emeralds. This is defiance. The cold tone I'd heard at breakfast, then directed towards Mia, resurfaced, and it shook me from my delighted trance. Will you punish them? I glanced up, looking into his eyes, silently urging him against the idea. His face softened as he brought my hand to his lips and offered a slight smile. Of course not, my child. They are free to believe what they wish here. The humans run the village with minimal interference from us. I sighed as warmth surged to my face and chest. Of course, you wouldn't punish them. My papa couldn't hurt anyone. Okay. So I'm thinking maybe I'll stop there. Oh, yeah. I think that'll be it for the night. And we will start at chapter 7, part 1 tomorrow or the next time I'm here. Probably tomorrow. What else am I going to be doing at 4 in the morning, 5, 6 in the morning? And I will be back to read to you guys next time. Like I said in my last video, this is not going to by any means be the audio version of this book. I am not a professional. I am simply a writer who is reading, and I hope you are enjoying this, and I also hope this new mic sounds okay. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you guys in the future. Have a beautiful morning, evening, afternoon, night, wherever you are, whatever time it is where you are. And please always remember that I love you. I will talk to you soon. Bye.